What's your name?
I'm Leah Barnaval.
How old are you?
14.
Do you think you could win the show?
I think that there's always someone better than you.
Okay, well, we wish you the best of luck.
Known as one of the most brutal, straightforward, and blunt judges of the show Britain's Got Talent, Simon Cowell has never been easy to impress. But one performance, by a 14-year-old girl, would change the world's perception of him, as her high notes unexpected brought him to tears. The stage lights were as merciless as ever. It was another season of Britain's Got Talent, another queue of hopefuls clutching their dreams like lifelines. For the audience, it was just an entertainment show. For the judges, another long day. But for one 14-year-old girl standing in the shadow of the stage, this was everything. And no one, not the audience, not the judges, not even Simon Cowell himself, could have predicted that this quiet teenager would change the tone of the entire room. It had been a long filming day. Simon had just given a sharp critique to a previous act, a boy band who had sung off-key. He leaned back in his chair, eyes heavy, sipping water as the next name was called. "Please welcome, Leah Barnaval." From the side of the stage, a small figure stepped out, 14 years old, dressed in a pair of jeans under a pale pink jacket with trembling hands. She looked around the enormous theater, her gaze darting nervously toward the four judges. Amanda Holden smiled warmly, while Alicia Dixon gave an encouraging nod. David clapped gently. Simon, on the contrary, folded his hands, his expression unimpressed. As she walked out, timid and wide-eyed, the crowd gave polite applause. But Simon barely looked up. He had seen thousands of nervous young contestants. Many had beautiful voices, sure, but very few had that thing, that amazing spark that froze the air, a presence that demanded silence and attention. So when she smiled shyly and introduced herself, his expression stayed unreadable. The audience could sense it. Another hopeful kid, another song, another easily forgettable audition. But what happened next changed everything. Emma's voice quivered as she spoke into the microphone. "Hello, my name's Emma, and I'm going to sing Nella Fantasia." The crowd murmured. It was an ambitious song, one known for its impossible high notes and its operatic demands. A song that even trained professionals sometimes avoided on live TV because of how incredibly difficult it was to sing. Simon raised an eyebrow. "Big song," he said flatly. "Yes, sir," she whispered, her hands shaking visibly. Simon proceeded to ask her about her hopes and wishes for the competition. This was where Leah revealed that passing the preliminary stage would mean everything to her. But that was not the only shocking thing she said, as she pointed at a little boy, revealing him to be her younger brother, who had come all the way just to root for her in the audience. All the judges, and most of the audience, found this incredibly heartwarming, but Simon was not to be distracted. "All right then," he replied, leaning back. "Let's hear it." On cue, the music began. The orchestra filled the air with a soft swell of strings. She closed her eyes, took one deep breath, and for a heartbeat, everything was still. Then, she sang. The first note wasn't loud, but it was clean, crystal clear. It drifted through the theater like sunlight on water. The murmuring stopped, heads turned. Even Simon's eyes flicked upward for the first time, and as her voice rose, each word poured with sincerity. No trembling now. There were no longer any signs of her nervousness. The tone only grew richer and fuller. The faces of the judges could not hide their surprises. And then came the first crescendo. Simon's brows lifted, just a little. It wasn't disbelief yet, but a growing curiosity, the very first crack in his wall of cynicism. By the time she began to belt out the second verse, Leah was no longer a shy teenager. She was now a vessel for something divine. The audience sat frozen, afraid even to cough or whisper. Each note soared higher, carried by a breath that didn't seem possible for a girl so young. Behind the judge table, Alicia's eyes glistened, and Amanda pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed by the beauty of Emma's voice. Even Simon had leaned forward, his elbows on the desk now, studying her with the same focus he used when judging global superstars. There was something unexplainable in the way her voice filled the room. It wasn't just power, it was purity, a raw, emotional clarity that made every lyric sound like a prayer. Then, next came the high note. It began as a soft climb, rising and rising, past the ceiling, past everyone's expectations. The hall seemed to tremble. Emma's voice reached a pitch so flawless that the audience collectively gasped and cheered loudly. Simon could not stop himself from blinking in shock as his mouth fell open slightly. Her voice wasn't just good. It wasn't just surprising. It was beautiful. For the first time that day, Simon's notes, the ones he used to jot down critiques, lay untouched. His pen dropped to the table. A close-up camera caught it, as if to document the moment the usually stone-faced judge's eyes turned glassy, in awe and surprise. The crowd erupted into applause even before she finished, but Leah didn't stop. She lifted her chin, holding the note with impossible grace, the kind that radiated off of stars. And in that infinite moment, Simon Cowell, Britain's harshest talent judge, forgot about ratings, forgot about auditions, forgot about everything but that sound. The sound of a child channeling something bigger than herself had truly captivated him. When the last note faded, the silence that followed was electric. No one dared move. It was as if the entire theater held its breath. And then, while everyone was still lost in shocked silence, something unexpected happened. What happened next? Keep watching to find out. Just as the audience held their breath, basking in the afterglow of the 14-year-old's beautiful performance, the most surprising thing happened. A single tear rolled down Simon's cheek. Caught by a close-up camera, it was a sight no one ever thought they would see. The audience gasped. Cameras flashed non-stop. For a man known for his unshakable composure, this was the first time in history Simon was caught so overwhelmed by a singer's performance. Amanda whispered, her voice full of shock, "Simon, are you crying?" He didn't answer. He looked at Emma, still standing on stage, hands clasped, chest rising and falling from the effort of that final note. Finally, he said softly, "That was extraordinary." His voice did nothing to hide the shock and awe he was feeling. It was easy to see that this cold-hearted man had been thoroughly impressed by Emma's heartfelt performance. The crowd exploded into a standing ovation. People clapped, shouted, some even cried. Even the stage crew at the sides were wiping tears. Emma's little brother was the first to scream, happy tears staining his little face. Leah blinked, stunned by the noise. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling again, but this time with relief, not with the fear that had initially overtaken her. Simon was the first to speak amongst the judges. He smiled through the tears as he clapped happily while shaking his head. "I didn't expect that. I genuinely didn't. You walked out here like a frightened little girl, and you just delivered one of the best vocals I've ever heard on this show. Nothing could have prepared us for that. Thank you so much." Leah smiled through her own tears as she thanked the judge. She could not believe that her performance had truly touched the heart of Simon, who was famous for his criticism. She knew very well how difficult it was to impress Simon Cowell, and she was in disbelief that she had actually done it. She had even managed to get some praise out of him. It seemed to Leah that the evening could not get better, but little did she know that this was just the beginning. While Simon was praising her, the music swelled again, and surprisingly, golden confetti began to fall from the sky. The golden buzzer, the highest privilege any contestant could get in a talent competition. Amanda's hand had slammed it down in tears, unable to contain herself. Leah covered her mouth, equally as overwhelmed as glitter rained over her. And Simon, who was still sitting, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, then stood to applaud. And the ice had melted. Emma, a young girl who had looked as ordinary as anyone else, had done what almost no one could. She had melted the ice that was Simon Cowell. The judges walked to hug her, and her little brother was ushered onto the stage to share in her joy. Leah had already turned the perspective of the judges towards her around completely, but when the show cut to her backstage interview, the story deepened. Leah wasn't from a family of musicians. Her father was a bus driver, her mother a nurse. They couldn't afford vocal lessons, so she learned by watching YouTube videos of opera singers. Day after day, Leah practiced in her bedroom, sometimes late at night when the city outside was quiet. Her brother would sneak by her door to listen, whispering, "You're gonna be on TV one day." She laughed every time. Until one night she sent in an audition tape, hoping she got picked. But secretly, Leah was unsure of herself, yet she was determined to try her best. And now, here she was, making Simon Cowell cry and getting the much sought-after golden buzzer. To Emma, this was already more than she prayed for, but that was not the end of it. The next day, the clip went viral. Millions watched in disbelief. Comment sections filled with messages like, "This restored my faith in talent shows," and "If Simon cried, you know it's real." But behind the fame, Leah stayed humble and grounded. "I just wanted to make my mum proud," she told reporters during a mid-competition interview. And she had done far more than that. She'd made the world pause, but this was just the beginning of Emma's rise. The next performance would push her voice and Simon's emotions even further. In the days that followed her audition, Leah Barneville became a global sensation. Numerous clips of Simon wiping his eyes circulated across every major platform. Headlines that read, "Simon Cowell cries on Live TV," "The voice that melted stone," blew up on the internet with thousands of netizens clamoring to know just who the girl who changed Simon's mind was. Leah managed it well after all. Somewhere beneath all the noise was a 14-year-old girl, still just trying to finish her homework. But her humility did not stop her fame from skyrocketing. And the reason why Simon's reaction made Leah so popular is nothing but shocking. Simon isn't just a TV judge. He is one of the most influential figures in modern music. From working in the mailroom at EMI to signing chart-topping acts at BMG, his entire career has been built on spotting real talent long before the world sees it. When he helped create Pop Idol, The X Factor, and Got Talent, Simon redefined what it means to discover stars. His brutally honest feedback made him famous and feared. A nod from him could launch a career, and a frown could end one before it ever started. That is why his reaction to a performance mattered so much. He has seen thousands of auditions, heard almost every vocal trick, and yet he rarely showed emotion. So when a 14-year-old's voice brought him to tears, it wasn't just a touching TV moment, it was a historical moment in the world of talent shows. Simon's tears meant one thing: you've done the impossible. You've moved the man who thought he'd seen it all. But while the world watched in admiration, Leah was quietly terrified. The semifinals loomed ahead, and the pressure was suffocating. She knew that every note she sang now carried more weight. The same judges who had adored her would expect even more. And Simon, who'd shown a side of vulnerability no one had ever seen before, was counting on her to deliver something even livelier than her audition performance. Something that wouldn't be a letdown to the impression she had created. Her worry made her exhausted, so much so that during rehearsals, she often stuttered. Her throat tightened with nerves, and her confidence wavering. "I can't do this again," she whispered to her mother one night, voice cracking from exhaustion. Her mum knelt beside her, smoothing her hair back. "Darling, do you remember why you sing?" Leah hesitated. "Because it makes me feel like I'm somewhere safe." "Then sing for that," her mother said softly. "Don't sing for Simon. Don't sing for the cameras. Sing for the part of you that no one can touch." And with that simple reminder, the wheels of her life were once again turned around. When the semi-final day arrived, the theater buzzed with anticipation. The lights, the audience, the murmuring of cameras, everything felt louder and sharper than before. Leah stood in the wings again, just as she had weeks before. But this time, her heart wasn't trembling. It was calm and ready. The day before, she had listened to her mom and made the decision to give it her all. Soon enough, the host announced her name, and the audience cheered loudly for their little star. As Leah took a deep breath, and everything she had been worrying about was deemed to disappear. As she stepped out, Simon Cowell watched her closely, his slightly cold expression unreadable once again. He had purposely avoided showing too much warmth, wanting to see if her magic could stand on its own. This was not just a performance, not for Simon. This was a test of Emma's capabilities, and he was in for a shock. "Welcome back, Emma," Amanda said, smiling. "What will you be singing tonight?" Leah took a breath. "A song called Angel." Simon tilted his head slightly. The song was a risky choice, known for its simple, delicate, and emotionally raw tone. It could either aid Leah in soaring or send her crumbling. Everyone held their breath as they looked at Emma's blanket expression. It was easy to see that she was fighting for what she believed in. As the music began, a single piano note echoed, then another. When she started to sing, it was not loud. Rather, her voice carried some fragile quality to it. The kind of fragility that draws you closer and makes every word in the lyrics feel sacred. Her voice remained as awe-inspiring as before. The notes rang clear as a bell, and the softness of the music sent the crowd into another round of quiet staring. They had never heard a girl sing so well, so beautifully. Simon's eyes softened almost immediately. There was no showmanship in Emma's performance, only honesty. She sang like she was telling her own secret to the world. The crowd stayed silent. So silent you could almost hear a pin drop. Even the judges seemed to be holding their breath again. By the chorus, her voice rose, not like an explosion, but like dawn, breaking over the dark horizon. It filled the room with warmth and melancholy all at once. Amanda clasped her hands together, her eyes once again widening in shock as she witnessed Emma's greatness and her dedication. Leah belted out the seemingly impossible tunes without so much as a stutter or a tone break. Then came the bridge, that impossible moment where emotion and sound could collide. She lifted her chin, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, and hit the high note. It soared, stretched, and trembled from the power within her which had been held in restraint for so long. Emma's voice was unstoppable. The high notes she was singing were almost impossible to do, so consistently seemed like child's play to this 14-year-old girl. Her talent was mind-blowing, but something even more surprising happened. Right there, as Leah was singing her heart out on the stage, Simon Cowell did it again. He covered his mouth, closed his eyes, and this time, he didn't even try to stop the tears. This time, Simon was crying because he was surprised. Quite the difference. Instead, he was crying because he understood. The voice the little girl sang in, as beautiful as it was, carried her entire soul. It was greater than all the voice training and professional conduct he had ever seen. As the final notes faded, the room didn't move. The audience sat frozen in reverent silence. Then, one by one, people stood. First the front row, then the next. Then all at once, the entire theater erupted into applause. Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. She'd done it again. Amanda and Alicia were already in tears. Her little brother stood clapping over his head, but Simon just sat there for a moment, still. Finally, he spoke. "Emma," he said, voice thick, "I've been in this industry for decades. I've worked with people who've sold millions of records, performed all over the world, and yet I can't remember the last time I felt something this pure." The crowd roared in applause, with a few daring people in the audience whistling. With a bright smile on his tear-streaked face, Simon leaned forward, lowering his tone as if speaking to her alone. "You remind me why we still do this, why this show matters. You made everyone in this room feel something real." And then, slowly, Simon stood up. The entire auditorium went wild. It was his second standing ovation for her, something he'd never done for any contestant before. Leah looked close to fainting. Her little brother, sitting in the audience, waved a tiny flag and shouted, "That's my sister!" It was the perfect moment. But what Simon said next silenced even the cheers. "You've got something no one can teach, Emma," he said. "And if you ever doubt it again, remember this night. Remember how you even made me cry." After the cameras stopped rolling, Leah was ushered backstage. Reporters crowded, flashing lights, questions shouted from every corner. But Simon didn't leave. He stayed behind, quietly watching her from the judges' table as she hugged her family and cried. Amanda leaned toward him. "You okay?" He nodded, then exhaled. "That girl's special, Amanda. I've seen thousands of performers, but there's something different about her. Something I can't really explain." And then, almost as an afterthought, he said quietly, "She reminded me of what it's like to feel human again." It was a rare admission, even for him. Simon Cowell, who had been in the public eye since 2001 and in the entertainment industry for much longer, was admitting to a 14-year-old changing his life. Amanda could not hide her surprise, though she was civil enough to only respond with a kind smile. Later, When Leah came over to thank the judges, Simon didn't speak at first. He just smiled and said, "Don't lose that, Emma. Whatever that is in you, make sure to not only protect it, but also to put it to good use. I will keep rooting for you." She nodded, tears of genuine gratitude streaming down her face. "Thank you, Mr. Cowell." And he whispered, "Call me Simon." By the time the finale came, Leah wasn't just a contestant anymore. She became a symbol of hope for many of the talented young people across the country, especially on the internet. But her popularity did not end on the internet either. Schools invited her to perform, while newspapers called her the angel voice. But for her, it all came down to that final performance. One last chance to honor where she came from. Her song choice for her last performance was "You Raise Me Up" by Westlife. When she began, her voice was steadier than ever, less trembling, more controlled. But what struck Simon most wasn't the power, it was the grace, the humility and ease with which she carried herself, and improvement from her nervousness the very first time she appeared on stage. She didn't sing to win, she sang to show her gratitude and joy. As the song built toward its peak, the camera caught Simon closing his eyes again, hands clasped beneath his chin, as he enjoyed the flawless music. When she reached the final high note, it wasn't just a note. It was a combination of every doubt, every fear, every prayer she'd whispered when no one was watching. And when she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Simon stood once more, clapping slowly, eyes wet. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the mic, "you just witnessed the birth of a star." Soon enough, the clips of Emma's performance making Simon tear up constantly broke the internet, and many continued to wonder just how special Leah was. In an industry often clouded by cynicism and spectacle, a 14-year-old girl had reminded the world that art still has a soul. Weeks later, in a radio interview, Simon was asked about the moment that made him tear up. He smiled faintly. "You know," he said, "I've seen singers hit every technical note perfectly, but Emma, she hit something no one else has in a long time. She hit the soul. And that's what stayed with people. Not just her talent, but her truth. The reminder that sometimes, even the hardest hearts can be moved by the simplest voices." Thank you for staying with us. What do you think of Emma's special voice and how it melted Simon's heart? Do you think she went on to win the show? Share your opinions with us in the comments. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.